Once upon a time, in a busy city, there was a wealthy family. The parents, Mr. and Mrs. Benjamin, were always working hard to make money and grow their business. They lived in a big house and had everything they could ever want, except time for their only child, a little boy named Oliver. Oliver was only 8 years old, but he often felt very lonely. His parents were never around to play with him or listen to his stories. Oliver's parents loved him, but they were so focused on work that they didn't notice how sad he had become. Every morning they rushed off to their offices, leaving Oliver with the house help. They had a routine of dropping him off at his grandmother's house whenever they had long trips or very busy work schedules. But Oliver dreaded going to his grandmother's place. His grandmother, Mrs. James, lived alone in a beautiful house at the edge of town. She was a tall, elegant woman with silver hair and always wore the finest clothes. She had been single for over 30 years after her husband passed away. Even though she seemed friendly and caring to everyone else, Oliver knew that there was something different about her, something that made him uncomfortable. Every time Oliver's parents told him he would be staying with Grandma James, his heart sank. "But I don't want to go," he would tell them. "Can't I stay here with the house help?" But his parents would always say the same thing. "Your grandma loves you. You should be happy to stay with her. We'll be back before you know it." So off Oliver went, feeling helpless. At first, his grandmother welcomed him with open arms, cooking him nice meals and buying him toys. But as soon as the sun set and the house became quiet, her kind smile disappeared. She began treating Oliver differently, in ways that made him feel uneasy and scared. He didn't know how to explain it, but something was very wrong. She would hold him too close, kiss him on the lips, and caress his back, and sometimes do more things that made him want to cry. The boy didn't know how to tell his parents about it. Whenever they came to pick him up after their long trips, they were too tired to listen to him. "I don't like staying at Grandma's house," he tried to say once, but they brushed him off. "Oliver, we're doing this for you. We're working so you can have a good life. Now be a good boy." Oliver knew his parents loved him, but they never had time to hear him out. The grandmother, on the other hand, always acted sweet and caring in front of them. "He's such a joy to have around," she would say, smiling brightly. Oliver hated those moments because no one could see what was really going on. At school, his teachers noticed that Oliver wasn't the cheerful boy he used to be. He became quieter, sadder, and often sat alone during playtime. His friends would ask him to join their games, but Oliver just didn't feel like playing anymore. His heart felt heavy with a secret he didn't understand. He knew what his grandmother was doing was wrong, but he didn't know how to stop it. She always told him, "Don't tell anyone, Oliver. This is our little secret. If you tell, no one will believe you. They'll think you're lying." And so, Oliver stayed silent. He thought maybe his parents were too busy to help him, and he felt completely alone. The more time he spent at his grandmother's house, the worse it got. The nights were the hardest. He would lie awake, hoping for the sun to rise quickly so that he could go back home. One day, after a particularly long stay at his grandmother's, Oliver sat by the window of her house, looking out at the world. He watched other children playing outside and wished he could be like them, carefree and happy. But instead, he felt trapped in a world where no one seemed to care about his pain. Grandma James continued her life as though everything was normal, always wearing her fancy clothes and acting like the perfect grandmother in front of others. But when it was just her and Oliver, she was different. Oliver knew he needed to do something, but he didn't know what. At school, Oliver's behavior grew even more unusual. He wasn't just quiet anymore. He looked tired all the time, as if he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were always neat and clean, but his eyes looked empty and his smile had disappeared. His teachers started to worry about him. One day, Mrs. Jack, his class teacher, asked him to stay after class. "Oliver, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft and kind. She knelt down to his level, trying to meet his eyes, but Oliver just stared at the floor. He didn't know how to answer her. He felt ashamed, confused, and scared. What if no one believed him? And what if his parents got angry with him for saying something bad about his grandmother? "I'm fine," Oliver mumbled, barely loud enough to hear. Mrs. Jack wasn't convinced. She had seen this kind of sadness before in other children. She knew that something was wrong, but without Oliver saying anything, she couldn't do much to help. She let him go, hoping he would open up later. But for now, Oliver remained silent. At home, his parents barely noticed the changes in him. They were always in a rush, preparing for the next business trip or meeting. When Oliver tried to talk to them, they were too busy or too tired to listen. "Not now, Oliver," they would say. "We'll talk later." But later never came. One night, while lying in bed at his grandmother's house, Oliver couldn't take it anymore. He felt trapped, like he was in a cage. His chest felt tight, and tears welled up in his eyes. He thought about running away, but where would he go? He had no one else to turn to. His parents were never there, and his grandmother made sure to keep their secret hidden. "Don't tell anyone, Oliver," she would say with a sweet but threatening smile. "No one will believe you. This is our little secret." The next day at school, he sat alone during lunch, poking at his food. His friends noticed that something was wrong. "Oliver, do you want to play with us?" one of the boys asked. But Oliver just shook his head. He didn't feel like playing. Nothing seemed fun anymore. One of his friends, a girl named Grace, sat down beside him. "You look sad all the time now," she said, her voice full of concern. "Are you okay?" Oliver wanted to tell her the truth, but the words wouldn't come out. He didn't know how to explain what was happening to him. He just nodded and said, "I'm fine," even though he wasn't. One evening, as Oliver was getting ready for bed at his grandmother's house, she came into his room with that same fake smile. Oliver's heart started to race. He knew it was coming, and he hated it. His body felt heavy with fear, but he didn't know how to stop her. He felt powerless, like no one in the world could help him. "Be a good boy, Oliver," his grandmother whispered as she sat on the edge of his bed. "Remember, this is our secret. Now, lie down on the bed and take off your pants." Oliver's heart beat fast. His grandma was going the extra mile this time. Usually, she kisses and caresses now. He wants him to lie naked on the bed. Oliver swallowed his breath and said, "Grandma, please, Grandma, I do want to. I don't like it." Then his grandma replied harshly, "Get on the bed now and take off your pants, or else I will deal with you." Oliver, crying, got on the bed and started crying, but his grandma didn't care. When she was done with him, she threatened, "If you tell anyone, they will never believe you, so make sure you keep quiet." Then she left. Oliver felt trapped. He wished he could disappear, run away, or just wake up from this nightmare. But instead, he closed his eyes, hoping that it would all be over soon.